Hey, Mary Kay, does the Browns front office outsmart themselves? They had a capable backup on contract. They could have kept all three. And to save a few dollars, they risk the entire season because DTR was one injury away. It seems like poor risk-reward analysis.
Well, here are my thoughts on that, Dan. When you're weighing Joshua Dobbs against DTR, and you know that DTR is probably going to be your number two at some point down the road, they probably determined that in their minds, there wasn't all that much difference between those two in terms of being able to get something decent back in draft pick compensation. And they were at that point all flush with excitement over DTR and the things that he had done in the preseason. They were so over the moon excited about him. And I think in the fog of war, the heat of the moment, whatever you want to call it, it seemed like the right decision at the time. And I don't think any of us, really questioned it too much at the time, although I think we did to a degree. I remember writing and talking in a few different places about the fact that they were taking a pretty big risk by going with a completely unproven rookie as their number two quarterback in a very high stakes season. I remember writing that somewhere or saying it on this podcast because I really did feel that way. But it was kind of hard to make the argument that Joshua Dobbs was any, great advantage over DTR because he had only started 2 games in his career. But the thing about Joshua is that he's been around for 6 years. The game does slow down for you after that amount of time. And he at least had played 2 games and had those games under his belt. And you really learn a ton by getting out there and playing in a live game. So much more than obviously you do at any other point. So at least he had a couple of starts under his belt, but I never really felt like Joshua Dobbs was a great option at backup quarterback either because of the uncertainty. Now he's gone out in Arizona and he's done a really nice job, but I didn't really think that was a great idea either. I felt like in this high stakes season that they needed an experienced veteran backup quarterback who could really come in there, like a Jacoby Brissett, who could come in there and start and win games for you and hold down the fort in the event that Deshaun got injured. And because he's a running quarterback, the risk for that is relatively high. So again, when you're weighing DTR versus Joshua Dobbs, it wasn't that it was 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, but it was maybe like 60-40. It just wasn't a huge disparity. So, that was the issue there. But I do think now as they move forward, and you wrote about this as your zero story right as the game ended, that, they really do need to take a look at this and ask themselves, given the fact that Deshaun right now is suffering from a bruised shoulder, and that there could be other times during this season when they need to go to their number 2 quarterback. Is he the right one? It's perfectly fine to question that based on what we saw yesterday. So, I think it's something that they do need to take a look at during this bye week and before the trade deadline on October 31st.
You just have to make sure. You have to know that you're ready at that backup quarterback position. And it was just so strange the way they approached it. They re-signed Josh Dobbs. They made this big deal about him being the backup. They didn't play him in the preseason. They treated him like the number 2 quarterback. The day he was traded, Kevin Stefanski confirmed that he was definitely the number 2 quarterback. He didn't waver on that. And then a few hours later, Josh Dobbs is traded. It was just a bizarre situation. And again, it's not like they got a 3rd-round pick for him. They got a 5th, which is a nice pick. I mean, they've used 5th-round picks to get guys like Amari Cooper and I think what was Zadarius for a 5th-round pick. So they've used 5th-round picks to get good players. So I understand why you like having those, but I don't know. I think it's an interesting question, and obviously now with a little bit of the hindsight of seeing how Dobbs has played in Arizona, it kind of stings a little more. But it's not a question about Josh Dobbs anymore. It's a question about what do you do moving forward.